Hallo, hallo.
Thank you, Meli. So, hello. Welcome to Apartment Project Berlin, to the 20th episode of Chromatic Wednesdays. It's the third season of the series, and my thanks already to Emre, to Meli, to Zelda to organize this amazing series of events. Always on Wednesdays here, and I had the honor already last year, about the same time, a bit later, in December, to present a short film program, Glaring Light, last year, relating to the theme curiosity. And now, this time, it's the theme intelligence. So I was asked to put together a short film program that relates to the notion, the idea, the reality, the nature of intelligence. So I brought 4 films under the title Talking Nature, The Invisible World by Jesse McLean. It's from 2012, 20 minutes long. The second is Nature See You by Erik Bünger from 2020, also about 20 minutes. Then VO by Nicolas Gourault from France from 2020, 17-minute short film. And Joe by Laura Henno, a photographer and filmmaker, also from France. That film is from 2018. This time I won't introduce or say much about the videos. Let them speak by themselves and create the relations to talking nature. I just give a little intro, and then we see the films, and I'm very happy to have Erik here to talk about the program and about Nature See You after the screening. And also welcome to the online audience, because here Chromatic Wednesdays is always at the same time streamed. So there's a larger audience than only in the space, but I really appreciate that you came out tonight with this weather there. Intelligence is commonly understood as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge. For centuries, Western humanist thought has propagated the idea that intelligence is an exclusively human phenomenon and that man is an autonomous agent, the measure of all things. Research, for instance, into plant communication or artistic neural networks has challenged this certainty, while a new post-humanist approach has allowed for an understanding of all entities on Earth as being entangled with one another. Talking Nature features 4 artistic short films that reflect the shifting notion of intelligence and look closely at the interacting of objects, machines, and animals with humans, and vice versa. Enjoy the screening, and in about 70 minutes, we're gonna have a talk together with Erik. Thank you. All right. So it's very nice to be back on stage with Erik. I mean, it's about a year ago we co-curated the Impact Festival 2022, the course of smooth operations.
I have to say the same.
But we've seen each other in meantime. Yeah, which also gives an idea that your practice is multiple. You've been curating, you're making videos, video installation, you perform yourself quite a lot, you compose music. you write texts. And but before I get into that, I'm just haunted by asking you this mean question now. You don't need to answer. How would you describe the voice of Smoggy in the last film, calling out for Joe? It's shot on the island of Mayotte. That's a French. It belongs to France, and it's between the eastern coast of Africa and Madagascar.
How would I describe the voice of him?
Yes.
That's a very difficult question. Desperation, maybe. Or there's some kind of There's it's hard for me to answer that question. Sorry, but
just I mean because in Nature See You, it's so much about the voice of nature and a truthfulness of an animal language. So maybe in that respect, I'd be curious to compare these two voices or languages or projections of languages.
In the voice of what's his name again? The
Smoggy is the young man.
The voice there is like trying to reach some otherness, right? I just want to say also that I really love this film program. It was very, very well composed. And it's interesting because this otherness comes to the fore in many different ways. So it's like, I find it extraordinarily interesting for my own film, because my own film, really verges between this machine and the animal all the time. And this program was really a kind of a meta-reflection on that whole dichotomy somehow. But in the film with Smoggy, sorry. There is a human trying to reach over towards the other, and on a surface level in my film, it seems like, at least from the original footage, it seems like it's Coco desperately trying to reach the human, right? But if you look upon the film, it's of course, in that film, it's more like seems like an honest portrayal of this desperation of him, but trying to call for this dog. But in my film, it's sort of like what I was interested in when I found this footage the first time. This was footage that circulated on the internet just around the time of the Paris Climate Conference. Yeah, exactly, 2016, no?
Yeah, you know it better than me.
No, maybe I don't. Maybe I forgot it. But anyway.
November 2015.
Sorry, okay. What struck me, what was so interesting with this footage was the fact that it was this ambivalence. And I noticed its ambivalence from the subtitles, because the subtitles was so confusing to me. Why would they subtitle the gorilla in a way that was incorrect? I mean, you would never do that with a human. If the human, whether it's sign language or whatever language it is, you would never make subtitles.
Unless it's a migrant person. You would just kind of falsify your language talking to that person.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but you wouldn't do that if you interviewed a migrant person on German TV, would you? You wouldn't subtitle
maybe more on the street or so, but yeah.
Yeah, but it would be very mean, I think, to do that. No.
Talking to children, you also kind of infantilize your language.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this is an infantilization of Coco, right? So that's the way I noticed that that they wanted, on one hand they want her to talk, and on the other hand they want her not to talk. And that was sort of, then I sort of delved further into this with the image also that she makes. It also works. It works on different levels. It works on the level of the subtitle. It works on the level of the sign language as a kind of image for people who don't sign language. It seems like an image. It seems truer to reality somehow. And then the last level was the level of silence, or just looking, actually. So
the image.
And then so my portrayal, if you compare it to the other film, I think it's really a portrayal of an ideology. It's an ideology that tries to kind of demands that we see, we recognize her speech as the pure truth, that there is like a way of her to communicate directly to us. But it's very weird because of the fact that this absolute accuracy of her speech is dependent on her being inaccurate, you know. So, yeah.
You mentioned already a number of terms that are very crucial to your practice over maybe 2 decades now, like dealing with the body, the voice, the language, the animal as well. And what also comes in here, which is not so obvious in the first place, I mean, of course, it's found footage. You got it from the internet. That's what you've been working with since you did the Allens from 2004. Where we see Woody Allen, but then his voice, he's speaking in very strange tongues because it's just what he's saying is chopped up in his Synchronstimmen, so in his voice in other languages. So that's how you composed it. And I really love that work. And correct me if I'm wrong. So with this work, found footage comes in. And cinema or popular picture movies as a source material for your reflection on these notions and ideologies of body, voice, language. And it also comes back here in HRC, where you describe the gorilla as an apparatus of the movie camera and as well the movie projection. So what gave you that impulse back then to work with found footage? You had been mostly working with music or in composing music. You have training in music composition. So how did that come about? And then maybe as a second question, what is cinema for you?
Yeah, it came about because I was so... at that time I was studying at the Musical Academy in Stockholm, composition, and then I found that the whole... scene of music, like contemporary music, was very much focused on, was very apolitical, and was not really. It was just about, you know, notes and chords and systems of composition or like rhythms and so on. It's very abstract. So I was very interested. I was very interested in somehow addressing, cultural phenomena or ideology actually, and then it was very difficult in that situation. It was difficult to do that with music. It's very hard with music because music tends to be very abstract. So, but I started actually doing these experiments with sampling. Then that sampling then led me into working with video instead. I mean, now I'm still doing music sometimes, but yeah. So that was how I got into the whole idea to work with found footage. And what cinema is for me today was your question. I mean, I'm always trying to find ways to kind of deconstruct. In my own work, I always find ways to... I'm almost looking at cinema for the way it tries to convey a certain ideology, and mostly not so much through the content itself, but through the form. So I'm always interested in the form, and that's why right now I'm this video that we watched in HRC is part of a research project I'm doing at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, where I'm investigating the instrument of voiceover, and in this particular video, actually, this is the first video in a trilogy of videos, and I'm working on the third right now. And in this video, my initial idea was actually to use voiceover, like a classical voiceover, and I tried that using my own voice, and I realized that because my project is really about trying to sort of disable the power of the voiceover, the way that the voiceover is able to control the way you look upon an image and control you as a perceiver. So I realized when I used my own voiceover and applied it to the footage of Coco, it created this disparity between me and her that became very, totally against the whole idea. My voice just became very dominating. And then my second idea was to use a sign language interpreter, a living person. But then when I was trying the idea out, I found this footage of I found this app and I started to use it just to see how it would look, to see how it would, to find out if the timing would work and so on with a real sign language interpreter. But then I realized that this footage was way too interesting. Or this machine, the mirroring that she creates with Coco, I found very interesting because there is this moment, for instance, when she says Coco is a machine, and then obviously that sort of reflects back on the app itself, and also the fact that the app is very poor in its way of communicating. That reflects Coco because the subtitles that are there when the app speaks are not really what the avatar signs, and the same thing applies actually to Coco. So it's this strange mirror relation between the two of them. So I went to all these steps, and finally this is how the movie ended up in the end.
Coco is known to be trained in American Sign Language.
Yes.
So the app is
American Sign Language. Yeah. Yes, this was at this time. This is a couple of years ago. So I guess now I haven't looked at it lately, but at this time this was basically the only language that you could use online. Now I guess with development of artificial intelligence, I can imagine that these kind of apps are way more advanced. One thing which was interesting was that when I came upon this idea to use the avatar, my first idea was to use this. I contacted this because I realized, okay, the avatar cannot speak properly, and at that moment I didn't realize that was actually a very interesting effect. So I thought, okay, she has to be able to speak perfectly. So I contacted this company in Vienna who do this they have an app, but then they do a kind of post-production, so they create this perfect avatar. So this is because today I think you don't use so much what we are used to from before, that you have living signers who perform this translation live in front of the camera. This has been slowly replaced by avatars instead, because it's much more cost effective. And this company was focused on that. And the interesting thing was that when I showed them my idea, they said they got very offended because they thought I was comparing deaf people to apes, which there is a history of, apparently, I didn't know that, there's a history at that time, there's a history of comparing deaf people to apes, and so I tried to persuade them, but it didn't work out, and they were really confused they were asking me, who is speaking in this avatar? Is it you as a filmmaker, is it the avatar itself, or is it supposed to be a living signer? And then I realized this is really what's so interesting about for me in the film is precisely you cannot tell who's speaking, and that way.
So you couldn't answer that question.
No, I can't answer that question. But that was precisely, they gave me the clue to my own film in a certain way, because the way to disable the voiceover in this particular film for me was precisely not to have this source that you show that the source is not there, that there is no one that's. No, it's not totally ambiguous who's speaking, actually.
But in terms of there's a share of the image. I mean, it's the avatar is speaking.
Yes, the avatar is speaking, but an avatar is always
the gorilla.
But an avatar is always a void. Yeah. And in the same sense, the gorilla, in a certain sense, becomes a void also because you cannot tell who's speaking. With Coco, you cannot say if it's really her or if it's her, the people who have worked with her, who makes her speak in a certain way, So that there is also a mirroring on that level as well.
Please join us at any moment. We can hand the mic. There's another floating mic in the space. So if there's questions, comments from your side, please don't hesitate. To Erik, or what I could answer about the other films. That it becomes a bit more dialogical beyond our conversation. Erik, you said, it's part of your larger PhD project. It's part of a trilogy, and in all of them, definitely in the new work, The Mime and the Ape, also the animal plays an important role. You did also in the 2017, there was a work that was performed as a lecture and an installation presented, if I'm not mistaken, the elephant who was a rhinoceros. And when I quote from your website where you write about yourself, it says like you do the investigation concepts such as voice, body, image, and animal. So could you expand on the concept of animal you're investigating and how it reappears in different ways in these works?
Yeah, it's never an investigation of the animal as such. It's always an investigation of our own inability to deal with the animal. But it's always very tricky because, for instance, in HCU that you just saw, people always want to speak about, when I presented this film before, but can she really speak, and can she really have this knowledge of her own extinction and so on? But it's we are so maybe it's, of course with the footage of Coco is so mesmerizing somehow that it's very, very difficult to get away from that question. It's very difficult to always when you try to talk about the animal, it's very difficult not to make it seem as if you're speaking from an anthropocentric perspective where you're sort of claiming that the animal is this or that. I mean, so I'm always trying to, I'm never trying to say anything about the animal as such. I'm always trying to kind of confront the viewer with with language, how the animal functions within language as a kind of a placeholder for that which language cannot speak about, so to say. And that can appear in many forms. It can appear, that's why in the quote you mentioned, it's like the voice, the image, the animal, all these, a body can be also, all these things somehow point to kind of a void in language, and the inability of language to sort of incorporate its own outside. Yeah. So there's a word for something that is sort of wordless, you know. And this is what I mean all the time. There's a kind of a paradox there that I'm always trying to not sort of solve, but try to expose. Yeah.
I think it's as you say, or the avatar says how mesmerizing that footage is, no? Exactly in that, or applying function to, because how to talk with the ape is just by making the ape meet on the terms of human language,
exactly.
Or hear sign language, and then this absurdity of the infantilized subtitling to make that more truthful to something that cannot be on the equal level, because exactly. Only we master the intelligent language,
exactly,
or the elaborated or the complex enough one in comparison to others. So I can very much understand that it was so puzzling to you to see that. I mean, you just came across it by chance. Somebody sent it to you.
Someone sent it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone who knew that someone who knew the particularity of my interests. I'll say, yeah.
No, that's that's great. Yeah. Any questions from your side? I really like your new project, The Mime and the Ape, because it's also really interesting in comparison here, where then it's basically, as you say, it's so much about the voiceover, your PhD, but there the voice moment is a very brief one. Maybe you can tell a little bit.
Yeah, in the new work, I'm doing the exact reverse. So if in HCU, what you saw here, I'm sort of making this sourcelessness of the voiceover, because the voiceover this is one way I think about voiceover, is always it's dependent on not being seen. A voiceover is only a voiceover as long as the person speaking is not seen, and that the power of the voiceover really comes from that. It's sort of similar to the way God's relationship to the world. God is powerless as soon as he's outside the world. You know, if he enters the world, he seems to lose power, or like there's a kind of power attached to the very ability to be invisible and not be seen, because you cannot be dominated somehow. And then, so therefore you dominate. And this is the and in the way my way to kind of deal with that problem in Nature C was precisely to show this invisibility. So I sort of made the invisibility visible by means of the avatar, because the avatar is no one, like any avatar. I mean, it's
a machine.
It's a machine, but it's a machine. But I mean, someone is behind the words, but who is behind the words, you don't know. So this invisibility is visible. So the image and the voiceover sort of melted into one there. And in the new work, I'm trying to do the exact opposite. So I'm using an extremely hierarchical voiceover. So it's performed by a voiceover artist who does this kind of classic, very, very dominating voiceover. And then I'm trying to kind of do the opposite way, that I'm sort of, they are as, he's as dominating as possible, but I'm trying to sort of break the relationship between the voiceover and the image apart by the way that the voiceover himself, the way he speaks. So he sort of loses his ability to control the image by becoming more and more sort of perplexed by the image, you could say. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the well-curated film program. I really enjoyed it. And thank you. I have a question for Erik. Looking at the two protagonists, it's an avatar, but she's a young woman. And then there's the gorilla, who's, well, it's Coco, but in our human perception, she's maybe a bit genderless. Am I interpreting too much if I see a kind of Beauty and the Beast trope, or is that going too far?
No, you may interpret it that way. I don't see Coco as genderless, though. I think she's very, very gendered, because she somehow, the way I looked upon her is like really like Mother Nature. You know, she sort of has that. I think it's not her. It has been significant for her as a kind of the way she has worked in the media. I think the fact that she's a female has worked to, not to her advantage, but to the advantage of the people who wanted her to be who she became. So I never saw it as a relationship, Beauty and the Beast. It was more about this relationship between machine and animal that made that, and not only that, that would be a kind of a banal. If it was only that, it would be a bit banal. But it's the fact that this kind of, what was interesting for me was precisely that the way the subtitles don't sort of really represent what the person is saying, works on different levels, because the subtitles who you read when the avatar speaks are like this kind of perfect academic English, and then Coco is this imperfection. But there is a kind of weird mirroring effect because of the fact that they both cannot properly speak, so to say. That was the reason why I wanted to combine the two. Mm-hmm.
But in the app, you cannot model the avatar. That's the default setting.
You cannot model what?
The avatar? Is that a default setting? Or can you choose then hair color and
yeah, you
features?
can choose hair color, maybe. Yeah, I can't remember now. You can choose like male and female. And yeah, if you want. I picked the female precisely so that they would be more similar to each other, rather than that there would be some kind of reflection. They should reflect each other. They're, of course, very different. But if I would put the male there, things would have become very different, I think. Then you would have a male talking this kind of superior English, and then reflected by a woman who cannot, a female gorilla who cannot speak so then it would raise questions that I was not really at the center of the piece, let's say. Yeah. Yeah. No, you cannot. I mean, another thing which is interesting also is the fact that Coco, like when signers, deaf people sign, they use their face as well. I mean, they use their mouth a lot, and they articulate the words basically with the mouth. But
that's missing in the
avatar, but it's missing in Coco too. So
yeah.
So there was many unexpected ways in which those two images started to reflect on each other, and it was, as I said, it was just a coincidence that I discovered it, because I was actually planning to use a real living human signer from the beginning. So yeah. So yeah.
No, that's just a real a number of amazing coincidences that lead to a great work. Then it's on display at the moment in Galerie Nord, Kunstverein Tiergarten. Very nicely installed, because you have two flat screens back to back, and one with the English subtitle and the other with the German.
Right.
And does something happen there with that you have, because there you have the gorilla speaking in English in the original English subtitle, and then there's another process of translation into German.
The gorilla doesn't speak English, so
but it is in the original footage. It's the English subtitles,
English
right?
subtitles,
or
yes.
is that in like all kinds of languages available?
No, I don't think so. The original footage is American, as far as I know. Yeah. She signs American Sign Language. I mean, some very poor version of American Sign Language, and then it's translated into English instead in the subtitles. And then I started. It's been translated into 4 different languages. There's a Chinese version, Romanian version, German version, and English version. Yeah, it's just because people wanted to show in the different places, and I guess it doesn't matter to the piece. I think it works very well. I mean, I could read the German translation, so I know that it was quite up to the standards. But I mean, it's a difficult argument, as you noticed in the piece. So it's better if it's translated into German once it's shown in German. One thing which is if you want to, actually I will do like a secret screening tomorrow of The Mime and the Ape, which is the next video in the series at Galerie Nord.
You have the artist talk, The Voice and AI, together with Inke Arndt. She curated that exhibition. It's called Voices, Human Language in the Age of AI.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I can recommend to see it. Yeah. Okay. I would wrap it up now, and just doesn't mean that we leave. We can hang out at the bar here at Apartment Project. And I want to announce there's another Chromatic Wednesday, the number 21, on the 6th of December. But it's going to be in collaboration with Anorak, and also taking place at Anorak, another short film screening you see here with many interesting works. And it's about dystopia. So you're going to end this dystopic year with the theme dystopia. But there must be hope. Okay. Thanks, Erik. Thanks to Emre Melli again for mastering once more. So amazingly and technically perfect the Chromatic Wednesdays, and conceptually as well, of course. Okay, hope to see you next year again.